Baltimore Ravens still have a pretty glaring hole at center, but some details were revealed on the Ravens' mindset when the draft ended and what it could mean for the center position now.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens Wire. On today's show, we're going to talk about where the Ravens stand currently, especially when it comes into relation to their biggest competition. We'll also dive into Cam Ward, giving Lamar some sneaky praise, but also talking about what to expect from Lamar from a certain part of his offensive game. But in the first part of the show, there were some interesting tidbits revealed about the Ravens' mindset about the center position, particularly after the draft, and what that could mean for them now as we are a couple months removed from the draft. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here. Let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. Here with me today, you have most definitely heard his voice before, longtime Ravens PA announcer, and of course over on 105.7 The Fan, Bruce Cunningham. And Bruce, it's been an eventful offseason for the Ravens. I know we're kind of in the lull period right now, waiting for training camp to get here, but, you know, lots of excitement in there right now about the Ravens.
Yeah, there is. I tell you what, though, I think some of it's tempered by the Orioles. You know, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, this and it's happening again. So I think the Baltimore fan base is probably kind of doing this just a little bit. I like their chances a lot, especially, in regard to the rest of their division. I think they're loaded. I don't know if this is a Super Bowl team, but this could be their Super Bowl team if they get that center position straightened out. And I know that that's on your mind these days.
It definitely is. So we're going to talk about that, but I do want to take a minute to, just before we get into everything, Bruce, acknowledge the situation with Calais Campbell.
Yeah.
It's a horrible, tragic situation. And, you know, Calais is such an amazing human, and I'm so gutted for him and his family and everything that they're going through. It's a horrifying, tragic situation. And I mean, my thoughts and prayers and condolences go out to him and his loved ones. And, you know, I'm gutted for him.
Yeah, you know, how in the world do you react to something like that happening in your family? You know, and what makes it even sadder is that it's a mental health issue. His brother was not mentally healthy, and he had stopped taking. He's schizophrenic, and he stopped taking his meds. And people were worried about him. And Calais' mom was like, "He's a good boy. He's a good boy." And this happened. It's just tragic all the way around.
As details keep coming out, I'm sure we'll learn more information about it. But again, like just these initial details.
Yeah, he's such a good person, you know, and
yeah.
I hate when bad things happen to a good person. And Calais, he's going through some stuff tonight. You can be sure.
Yeah, and I hope that he's able to lean on the love of his family and his loved ones. I mentioned that, you know, when I initially had talked about it. So it's just a horrible situation all around.
It really is. It really is.
It's so my thoughts are with Calais, and again, I'm sure that the organization, the team, they're supporting him as much as they can, along with the rest of the world.
You know, he wears that little logo on his jersey wherever he plays, that NFL Man of the Year logo, and that's you know, that means something. You know.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So thoughts and prayers to Calais. But let's dive into the topics, Bruce. The center conversation. It's been something that a lot of people have talked about. You lose Tyler Linderbaum, and you don't really replace him outside of getting in a guy like Danny Pinter, Javon Gwen. You have Corey Bullock on your roster.
Yeah.
Now, Jeff Zrebiec at The Athletic, he did a mailbag, and I actually talked about some of it on the 6 p.m. show yesterday. And one of the questions that was asked was just about, you know, if the Hendrickson deal hadn't gone through as late as it did because of the Crosby situation, would they have re-signed more of their own free agents? And Jeff was like, yeah, Linderbaum was like pretty much he was as good as gone when he hit free agency. That deal was just going to be too much. But there was another question in there which caught my eye, and I wanted to talk about it with you, Bruce, about the center position in general. And this question coming from Ryan, who asked Jeff, how likely are we to actually make a trade for a center, and who are the top available targets? And Jeff said, quote, there seemed to be a level of confidence from team officials immediately following the draft that they'd be able to pull off a trade. I'm not saying I don't sense that same confidence, but Ravens folks are keeping their plans much closer to the vest. It's just hard to find teams that feel they have a surplus of offensive line depth. The name you hear most is Garrett Bradbury from the Chicago Bears. It isn't clear whether he's available, but it's easy to connect the dots. The Bears used the second round Iowa center Logan Jones. Bradbury, meanwhile, is experienced, solid option, who was coached by Ledford at North Carolina State and started in the Super Bowl roughly 5 months ago. So the Ledford connection is interesting with Bradbury, Bruce. But, again, I'm not sure where the confidence level currently stands. We did hear Eric DeCosta and company talk about potential options at the center position. It's one that I can't shake, that center spot.
Well, and then at the end of spring, Jesse Minter, his comment, I don't have it in front of me, but it was fascinating to me because he said, well, our goal of this mini camp was to get all three of them in position to compete in July. And I said, boy, that's just word salad. That's a complete non-answer. In other words, they don't know. I think they're going into this with their fingers crossed. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of trade being made. I mean, you got to have a veteran in there. Look, Lamar got beat to death last year. You can't be subtracting from that line. The line looks slightly better, but until they get that hole filled, I don't have much confidence in them at all. I really don't. As far as losing last year's starter, well, the Raiders came up $100 million under the salary cap. So if you remember, for about a week and a half, they were drunken sailors. And Linderbaum is the one that Ravens didn't expect to lose. They expected to lose the other free agents, but not Linderbaum. And they're all putting up a brave front, but I'm telling you, it's an issue, and it's a serious issue.
Yeah, it is. And again, I think the roster is in such a good position right now, but that center spot is the one I keep coming back to. And look, you're not going to have Bruce 5 all-pros on your offensive line, right? It'd be great if they did, right. But it's just, you're not going to have an all-pro at every single position. So
you can find a solid veteran, and I wouldn't give them the house, but I might trade a 4, for a solid veteran that you could plug in as a starter. I wouldn't have a problem doing that.
Yeah, I think what gives me the most confidence is that they did upgrade their guard spots.
They did.
Even you're not going to have Linderbaum walking through that door. So you're going to have some level of a downgrade at center from who Linderbaum is. But what you have done is you've elevated your guard play, which I think raises the floor and the ceiling of your group. And there was another question in this, Bruce, from Robert, who asked, is there a chance we see an unexpected positional shuffle on the interior, something like Emory Jones or Vega Ioane getting snaps at center? And Jeff said he didn't foresee Ioane getting snaps at center, but he did mention that he thinks he'll see some shuffling as they work to decide the 9 or 10 offensive linemen they'll keep on the 53-man roster. And he also mentioned Jones as an interesting case because he did play mostly guard last year, but for most of this offseason, Jeff said that we've seen him back at tackle, his natural position. And so, if you want to add center to that, that's a lot to kind of go back and forth with. But Emory Jones is an intriguing 6th offensive lineman. I mean, the Ravens didn't have a lot of depth last year to do anything with Bruce, even if they wanted to get, shuffle their, which they didn't want to shuffle their O-line anyway. But I do think it's interesting that, with all the depth that they do have, I think despite the center thing, they are in a much better position offensive line-wise.
Yeah, it's looking better, but until we get that center plug filled, then I'm going to reserve judgment. I want to see it all out on the field. The other thing to remember, and I'm not trying to be Dr. Doom here, but Ronnie Stanley is basically playing on one good leg, and that's something you should always be concerned about. I wouldn't be surprised at all next year if they don't draft a stud tackle, because he's getting up there and he's not getting any healthier. But if he is healthy, they are better from tackle to tackle, except for center. And, we've already talked about that. So if that's the only fault I can find, it's a serious thing, but the rest of the offense looks pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with what they're going to put out there on the field every week.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just Lamar Jackson's peace of mind with some of this improved offense. I wasn't out there with Lamar, Bruce, but I could probably, I can point to multiple instances where I'm sure Lamar pre-snap was thinking, man, I'm about to have a rusher in my face in half a second. I'm going to have to do something with this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then we saw multiple times. And he was something like that Steelers play, the touchdown to Zay late in that game. 2 guys just beeline straight for him, and he still makes it happen.
And he didn't used to get hit like that, But last year, if you remember, and I know you do because you pay attention to this stuff, he had 4 different injuries below the waist. 4, So, yeah, what's he supposed to do? And then it was frustrating all the way around. I'm glad that team didn't make the playoffs last year. I didn't think that team was good enough,
It put Lamar in such a bad spot overall, because
he's got to be the guy. If they're successful, he's got to be the reason. Well, he's going out there and he's getting his brains beat out week in and week out. And he's the guy that's supposed to squeeze wins out of losses for him. That's really frustrating. And Femi on the radio brought this point up, and this is a rock solid point. The reason that Lamar is waiting on the contract, to do the extension and all that, he wants to see if all this new stuff's going to work.
Sure. Yeah.
Why would he commit if he's not sure what it's all going to look like? That leads to him being there at the earliest of the spring camps and basically being a presence throughout. That was Lamar sending a message, okay, I'm here. Let's get to work,
Yeah. And I think the other really underrated part about this, which I'm really excited about on the offensive line as a whole, I think Dwayne Ledford has been an awesome addition for them and a really underrated one. Again, those assistant coaches can really make an impact. I mean, we saw the impact Joe D had for so many years, and rest in peace to Joe D. But he again was like, he had such an influence on those guys. George Warhop comes in, put in kind of the situation he came in, and
that was a hopeless situation. Don't judge him on anything last year.
It was a wacky situation in terms of how everything went, but Dwayne Ledford, widely regarded, really outside of Bill Callahan, like one of the best offensive line coaches, if not the best offensive line coach in the NFL. And there was another question about that, which I do want to get to in the second part of the show, as well as Cam Ward giving Lamar Jackson some sneaky praise. But we're going to talk about what that means and what we envision Lamar looking like in this offense this season. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match, with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals mean more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. And in the World Cup right now, so much exciting action, including you even have France and Paraguay. And France is the heavy favorite at minus 1,800. But anything can happen in the World Cup, which makes everything super, super exciting, especially with how exciting the World Cup has already been so far. I mean, it's been absolutely incredible. So much action over on FanDuel. And that's what I love about these tournaments. You can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Bruce Cunningham, still here with you, talking Ravens football on this Thursday.
I'm retired. I got no place else to go.
Well, you're stuck with me for the next 25 or 30 minutes, and I'm glad you are. It's great. Bruce, it doesn't even feel like July to me. It feels like June just kind of snap your fingers. June is gone. We're already in July.
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess I'm happy because it's Ravens training camp. So
well, it just gets worse as you get older. Time, boom, it just flashes by. My birthday's Friday. So,
happy early birthday.
Yeah, 68. There are people that would have put cash money down that I wouldn't make it this far. So I've defeated them.
Yeah, well, here you are, and you're still going strong. Still lots of.
I'm still going. I don't know how
ahead.
Strong it is, but
I'm going to say you're still going strong. So happy early birthday! But I do want to remind everyone that here on Locked On Ravens, we have you covered 5 days a week plus more. We have you covered twice per day, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time. Plus, we also have bonus episodes, it's the reactions, watch alongs, the squad show, and the Everydayer Club. So if you want your daily Ravens fix completely ad-free, you can join the Everydayer Club today. Start a 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link in the show notes to go to the Locked On Ravens page on the Locked On website to claim your free trial. And of course, we are here for you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's good. Alex.
I got it down. But oh man, let's dive into this last question that I wanted to talk about from Jeff's mailbag. It was about Dwayne Ledford, where the question comes from Connor, and Connor said, heard nothing but great things about Dwayne Ledford when he was in Atlanta, and that has continued with him in the building. But what specifically makes him such a good offensive line coach, and how high should our expectations be for this unit? Because it was such a sore spot for them last year. And he ended up saying, Jeff said, quote, "The things you consistently hear about Ledford are that he's very good and a very good teacher from a technical / fundamental aspect, and also a strong motivator who knows how to relate to players and push the right buttons to get the best out of each guy. He's known as a coach who upholds certain principles as non-negotiable, like exploding off the ball, but is also flexible in terms of playing and coaching to his players' strengths. As for the unit as a whole, they presumably have 3 new starters. Health is always a question with left tackle Ronnie Stanley. You mentioned that, Bruce. Right tackle Roger Rosengarten needs to play better than he did last year. We'll see what, if anything, they do to bring in another center, but I think this unit should be significantly improved. I'm not ready to predict top 5 O-line because all these pieces need to mesh, but the talent level has been upgraded and the Ravens have a much better mix up front. And one of the things, Bruce, I will say quickly about Ledford is that if you watch that Ravens Wired episode a couple weeks ago with him, he was very technical about the why of everything. He wasn't just telling guys, hey, you need to be better with your hands than just walking away. Or he was, hey, you need to move your feet better. He was explaining it to these guys and saying, this is what this is going to do for you. This is why we're doing this. And that was one of the big things that Jesse Minter has talked about, Declan Doyle has talked about, Ledford is practicing. I think that's a huge thing. I mean, there's a difference between just a coach telling you, hey, do it, and hey, do it, and here's why.
They're showing you this is how we're going to coach this team. You know, with Minter and everybody, everybody's saying the same thing, and it's a kind of a different style, a new age style of coaching. It's going to be interesting to see if it works. But as far as Ledford, he's got a superstar in that room, and he didn't have that in Atlanta. He had some great players in Atlanta, but he didn't have a superstar on that line. Well, he's got to make sure he and that superstar get like this. You know, that's going to be his biggest challenge going into this thing, in my opinion. Now, Stanley, I've been around him a lot. He's a tremendous individual. He really is. But that's going to be the first challenge as he comes in to take over that O-line room, is get Ronnie Stanley on his side. If he can do that, I like what I'm hearing about him, but let's get it out on the field. And for the 9th time, let's get that center thing fixed. You know?
we can say it 9 more times.
I'm kind of hung up on that. Yeah, I kind of am.
I know.
I tell you what, though, I love their defense. I really like the way the defense is shaping up. They made some really smart moves over there. And the one nobody's talking about is that expatriate back there at safety. That kid's going to make so much difference. It's incredible. I can't wait to see this unit on the field. I really can. And, you know, Weave is not really going to be the D coordinator, but I've known Weave 25 years, and it's his demeanor, you know, that's going to allow him to serve in that role, because he understands if this thing works here, that he's going to be a head coach somewhere. It's hard to be a D coordinator and know you're not going to be calling the plays, but he knew that coming in, and because he's the person he is, he can accept that. And it's going to be interesting to watch this unfold. It really is.
Yeah, and you can tell how much being back in Baltimore means for him. I mean, obviously the history of as a player and as a coach. I mean,
when he was a rookie, I knew we had a live one. When he was a rookie, Goose had just retired. Yeah, and they gave him number 98. And I said, is there any pressure with wearing Sarah Goose's number? And Weave just smiled, and he says, well, he gave it up. I knew he was going to be okay at that point. Well, you know, he's a Notre Dame guy, and he's an interesting he was adopted, and he grew up in Saratoga, New York, up in the horse. And I've seen him play Melissa by the Allman Brothers on the electric guitar. He's an unusual guy, but in the best possible way.
Man, I remember, I think it was literal minutes after that move was announced that he was coming back to Baltimore. I think he did an interview with a Saratoga news station, if I'm remembering correctly.
After visiting his family, you know.
Yeah. So, but he's a guy that, again, in just the connection that there is already, he's been in that room with those defensive linemen. Obviously, like, Miami was a weird situation. They started trading guys away, and it just was an underwhelming year for them. But you can, like, he's deserving of a head coaching opportunity. And there's also, before we get into the Cam Moore stuff, there's a lot of talk already, Bruce, somehow about Declan Doyle already leaving Baltimore to become, like, people love him so much. He hasn't called one play yet, but he's already getting a head coaching interviews.
Get the damn team on the field, all right? And then maybe we could talk about that. That's nuts. That's crazy.
Well, it gives me a vote of confidence, at least. Hey, people were so high on Declan Doyle that they're already talking about it. But again, I think he's prepared and he's ready. Yes, there is a risk.
Can Doyle play center? See, then we have something.
Yeah. You might throw him out. Although the one thing I will say, and I can't remember, it's slipping my mind if it was Minter or Doyle that said this, But one of the things that was said was that they want to give their players every single avenue to be successful on the field and get them ready for every single situation, because they're not going out there and playing center. They're not going out there and playing corner. So they want to give their players every single technical detail that they can. And something that I think Ben Solak mentioned on ESPN, and I talked about this earlier in the week, was that Sean Payton and Ben Johnson are also two very detail-oriented coaches. And so coming from that tree, I think it's going to help Declan Doyle out tremendously, especially as you kind of work towards finding out how you can elevate Lamar Jackson even more. And actually, this, I guess, kind of goes into what Cam Ward said, because I want to talk about Lamar's role in the offense, where Cam Ward, it was an interview with, I think, Overtime is what it was. And there was this little thing where they were predicting, he had people predict his stats for the season. And one of the guys mentioned he was going to have like 600 rushing yards. And Cam Ward said, 600 rushing yards, who do you think I am, Lamar Jackson? Like, what do you think's going on here? But it's an interesting conversation because, Bruce, we know Lamar didn't run a ton last season compared to what we were used to him doing.
4 injuries below the waist. That'll cut down on your run. You know?
That'll do it to you. And actually, it's funny because 600 yards outside of last season, if you want to take 2025 away, 600 yards would be a career low for Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, that's a big part of his game, but only 67 attempts for him last season. Right. His previous career low was 112 back in 2022, and that's when he only played in the 12 games with that injury situation at the end of the year. But what do you want to see in that regard? Like, do you want to see Lamar Jackson get back up to like that, I don't know, 130, 140 range, or do you want to see more target opportunities and more throws?
I don't think he's getting ready to be 30. Is he 30 yet?
He'll be 30 at the end of the season.
Okay, well, he's closing in on it. You can't play at 30 like you did at age 21 in the NFL, especially a quarterback. Your style has to evolve, and he's going to evolve into more of a passer. I don't think he's ever going to be a pocket passer, even though he excels at that when the situation presents itself. But in terms of Lamar getting 1,000 yards rushing, I think we might need to get used to the idea that those days are over. I mean, he's played a lot of football and he's not getting any younger. But I'm okay with that because, if there's anything in his game that's underrated, it's his passing ability. He can really throw the ball. So if he's going to evolve into that, I'm good with that,
Yeah, and like you mentioned, he already is such a good pocket passer. Something that I do think is really underrated about his game.
Show you throwing the ball, he really does.
Exactly. And I think for me, like Lamar at 30 is not the same player he was as a rookie, or I guess he's still 29. He's not 30 yet, but Lamar when he turns 30, gets older, everybody adapts and everybody evolves. And I think Lamar has evolved over the course of his career.
He's not a big guy. He's always relied on speed and guile and natural ability. And when that starts to ebb, you're going to get hit. But I like how he reacted to it. I like how he didn't quit last year. He stayed out there. He gutted it out. And I think the younger players even looked up to him even more after seeing him go through that battle, because he was a warrior last year. He really was. And I think it was the guttiest performance of his career.
It was. And, last year, obviously not really his fault in terms of all the hits he was taking. But we saw – like the evolution, his rookie season, he was taking on this. Like he was trying to fight for that extra yard and he was getting like walloped out of bounds. But I mean, that was his rookie season where he was getting that unnecessary yard and taking a big hit. Outside of his rookie season, he's been very smart about his body and making sure not to take those hits. And so, like, again, I think that Lamar can still play at an extremely high level as a dual threat quarterback for his entire career. And so, you're never going to see him like never run the ball ever again. Even if, he's not going to have the same athleticism at 33 as opposed to 23 or something like that. That's still always going to be a part of his game. It's something he is good at, but we've seen the evolution for him from when he was a rookie to where he is now. And even like the MVP seasons, you're like, man, Lamar just had this crazy year. Like there's no way he can get better, right? That's what people are saying. And then Lamar's like, watch this. He just had 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, just blowing expectations out of the water.
Yeah. Hey, he's just an achiever. We're going to sit back. See, all this has happened right in front of our eyes over the last 7 years, and it's happened really fast. But 10 years from now, well, if I'm still around, you will be. But 10 years from now, you're just going to sit back and say, you can look at those numbers again, and you're going to say, this is amazing. And we saw it up close, and we saw it in real time. And that's been the best part about this whole thing. I just wish he'd win a damn Super Bowl so the world would get off his back a little bit. He's done everything else,
Yeah, it's been awesome to watch him evolve. And the
I just don't
evolution.
want to see him go out and win one for the Rams or somebody,
keep it here. Keep it here. Keep it in Baltimore.
Yeah.
The Rams don't need anybody. Myles Garrett, they got Myles Garrett. We're not. Although that might be the team they see in the Super Bowl, if that's who it is. But I think that for Lamar, he is going to be just fine long term. Everybody changes, everybody evolves, and Lamar has evolved and consistently proven doubters wrong. And so, look, even if he's not, because his career high let me just make sure I have the numbers right. 176 attempts for 1,206 yards. That was 2019, right? That was in the Greg Roman offense and doing all that. But he's shown that he can play in any type of offense, right? He came in 2018 under a Marty Mornhinweg Joe Flacco system, and they had to kind of change it on the fly, and he leads the most 6-1 record, AFC North title, 2019 with Roman, 2023 on with Monken. Now you got Doyle in. Like, there's not a lot he can't do when it comes to offense. And I think that it's going to be cool to see Doyle have these bells and whistles.
That's a lot of coordinators, but that's kind of life in the NFL now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Hot coordinators they go elsewhere and often. And he's adjusted to that fairly well, I think Lamar has. I think he wasn't entirely sorry to see Monken go. I think that whole thing with Monken, I think it had gotten stale and predictable, and I don't think anybody was happy in the offensive room, to be honest with you. So now you got new blood, you got some enthusiasm. You've drafted some offensive players that can help you as rookies, so that adds some excitement. They just need let them play like Lamar again. Get them going like you did. Even though he's now almost 30, there's still things that he does better than anybody else in the game, and feature those things, and it could be a fun year. I look at the rest of the division, and it's a mess. The Bengals, they look like the stable one in the rest of the division. How often have we said that? They decided to get some defense, which is wise on their part, and they still could be pretty good. They could be a 9 or 10 win team. The Browns, they're just going to be the Browns. Come on. And the Steelers, how many years in a row, I'm writing them off, and it's always a mistake, but I just don't see the Steelers doing anything. They hired McCarthy. He doesn't fit the profile at all. 62 years old or whatever he is, and then you brought in Russell Wilson, and then you brought in Aaron Rodgers. This isn't Steelers stuff that they're doing up there anymore. The one thing you had to admire about the Steelers was their stability. They did things the right way, and that's why they were pretty good every year. I have no idea what they're doing up there right now. It's baffling to me. It really is. And I have a lot of Steeler relatives that are fans of the Steelers, and they don't understand it either. I don't get what's going on up there at all.
Yeah, the thing, even with the Bengals, it's like, their offense is one of the only ones that can keep up with the Ravens. I mean, Burrow and Lamar can go back and forth with the skill positions and offensive talent. You can't tell me Bruce.
Bengals are still better at receiver than the Ravens are. Let's say.
Yeah, well, Jamar and T. Higgins. I mean, that's an incredible duo. Yeah. That's probably the best in the league, or at least one of the best in the league, if not the best. But you can't tell me that Aaron Rodgers, if the Steelers go down 14-0 in the first quarter, are going to have or like 21-3 at halftime. Are they going to be able to come back and beat Lamar and the Ravens with this type of offense? I mean, with the Bengals, maybe, but.
I don't understand how the Steelers have let it get to this point. This is not the Steelers, what we're seeing now. I don't understand them. Here in Baltimore, I love it. I think it's the greatest thing ever. I wish the Yankees would start operating that way for a while, but the Steelers aren't the Steelers anymore. They just aren't.
Yeah, Yankees are going through their own struggles now.
Yeah. Well, they are, but you know what I mean.
No, I got you. But, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, because in the final part of the show, I want to expand it to not just the North, but to the entire AFC in general, because you got the Rams in the NFC as like the top team everyone's looking at, even after Seattle's Super Bowl. But in the AFC, I think it's pretty wide open. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Bruce Cunningham. We're talking Ravens football with you on this Thursday. And again, July. Still crazy we're in July, but we are in July. And we're going to be diving into now, because we started kind of kicking off the conversation about the AFC North. But Bruce, in the AFC, I mean, you look at the top seeds last year, like Denver, great season. But what are their prospects long term? I like the fact they got Jalen Waddle. Their defense is still really good. But I don't see them as like this clear cut.
Well, they got a
favorite,
young quarterback, and they got a first place schedule. Don't downgrade that at all. They've got a first place schedule to slog through this year. They got a great coach, and the quarterback looks really solid. But see, they're in one category to me. There's another category that almost there, and that's Buffalo and Baltimore. Both of those teams have been raring at it for years and years and years. And what's going to happen with those two? If you look at the AFC, that's kind of the way it breaks down. Kansas City is going to be Kansas City, and Houston is still very much on the rise. I like that Houston team a lot. I think if you want to pick a top dog from the entire AFC, I think it's one of those. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. And then you can look at a team like the Patriots, but again, it's just like they made a great year.
First place schedule. How are they going to handle that?
Yeah, it's true. And I think Baltimore, if we're talking schedules, I think Baltimore sets up really nicely. And I've talked about this a bunch on the show, but it's first of all, it's not a first place schedule. So
no West Coast trips.
Yeah. They're like 20. Yeah, they're like 26th or something in travel miles. It's not bad at all. And I think that the way that they've started the last couple of years has been pretty disappointing. They go 0-2 the year prior. They almost blew that Dallas game, so it was almost 0-3. But then this past year, obviously, they were 1-5. But again, that was a crazy start to their year last year. They're playing 5 out of your first 6 games as division winners, and 3 of your first 4 games are against teams who had 13+ wins last year. You have a nice soft landing spot for your schedule.
Well, again, the Ravens had a first place schedule last year, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
There you go. You don't have to be genius to figure this stuff out.
Yeah. And that's where, again, you look at the Ravens and look, obviously, it's unfortunate how the game ended for Baltimore against Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh is the one with the first place schedule and the Ravens are not. And the Ravens got the 14th pick and the Steelers got 21. And so it's those little wins within there. But I do think Baltimore and Buffalo are those two that I'm looking at. I'm not trying to write off Denver, not trying to write off New England or any of those teams.
You're right on the verge, both of them.
Yeah.
And neither one of them's gotten it done yet, and it's killing both of them. I mean, that's a real strong motivator, and that's going to be an interesting storyline this year. It really is, because I think whoever doesn't ascend from those two teams might be looking at the window starting to come down.
Yeah, and I think that Baltimore's roster, you have your core that is in that Lamar Jackson age range, Lamar, Mark Andrews, Roquan, Ronnie, that type, and you have your younger Hamilton, Wiggins, list goes on and on there. But in terms of where they actually stand right now, I think they're in a really good position overall in the NFL, because last year to me was the outlier, Bruce. It was injuries, it was weird coaching, it was weird. But this season, I think and this is the comparison I kind of make with Pittsburgh, but it kind of evolves just to Baltimore in general. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel for this team. For Pittsburgh, I just think they're going in the wrong direction, like we kind of talked about earlier. With Baltimore, I can see that they're being aggressive, that they are trying new things, that they are making sure that they get the right people in there that can give them both a high floor and a high ceiling, both short and long term. I think the light at the end of the tunnel is very bright. Again, it doesn't guarantee anything. You got to play the games, but I do think that they're going to have to go through some level of adversity here. I mean, you're not just going to go 17-0, but I think that it's good that they can have that early stretch. No game is easy in the NFL, but it's easier than what it's been.
Let's just see how this entirely new staff, operates this organization. That's my big question. Yeah, the roster looks great, but we don't know anything about Minter or the way he's going to coach this team. I need to have those questions answered before I'm sending them to Super Bowls. I can promise you that. And I guess it's cynical through age, but I'm not, they got a lot they have to show me, because you know what? They're coming into a really good situation with a really good roster. Now let's see what they do with it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the team would have the same message. Say, we got to show it. We got to prove it. And that's stuff that multiple different players and coaches have talked about, is feels really good, great start, but, we haven't put anything together on the football field yet in an actual game setting. And that's going to be, because again, I was talking up there. Once the Ravens signed Jair Alexander last year, Bruce, I was like, man, this is it. This is it.
I remember.
And then look what ended up happening. It was those little roster cracks that turned into huge holes, and that's what ended up being the downfall.
The great Bear Bryant put it this way: he says, "Potential's great, but potential just means you ain't done nothing yet."
It's true. It is true.
But you got a good coaching staff. Now show us.
Yeah, and I think that you can look at even Mike McDonald, right? I bring up this example all the time. That week 2 game against Miami in his first year as the DC. I mean, that was a really tough moment for him and how that game went. But he responded in that next week and really never looked back from there. Maybe there'll be a Mike McDonald moment week 2 Miami for this Ravens
team. One thing about the National Football League that we've learned is that it's unpredictable. You know, you just every year somebody pops up, somebody goes. I'm just saying, we sitting here in July trying to figure out what's going to happen this fall. Let's see them all get on the field. Let's see who gets hurt in training camp. You know, let's just see first. But I'm feeling as optimistic as I can. I'll give you that.
I am too. Optimistic is a good word, and I'm excited to see them on the field, especially as training camp kicks off and all the battles that ensue. But Bruce, thank you so much for hopping on with me. That's all I got for you. Before I get you out of here,
always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, and you'll be heard on my radio show before too much longer. I can guarantee you that too.
Absolutely, absolutely, Bruce. I appreciate you.
Right,
thanks so much, and thank you to everybody who watched and listened to Locked On Ravens today. Coming up, more Ravens content for you here, so be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.